Hello, my name is Sam Feltham and welcome to Expert Interviews here on Smash the Fat. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce to you a real low-carb, high-fat diet success story. A man that has lost 100 pounds in the last year, Larry Diamond. How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing very well and very humbled and appreciative to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you here because, as I said in your introduction, there you've had an amazing journey over the past year. So let's kind of start off with how did you get into a position where you felt like you had to do something about your health?
Sure, sure. Last year I was 47, and my wife and I had been married for 9 years at that time, and we had always wanted to start a family, and it was a long journey. We weren't able to have kids, and we're both overweight. And even when we were dating, we had talked about having one natural child and adopting a child. So eventually, life led us to adoption. We were finally able to adopt through the foster care system here in the U.S. and Texas. And, it was overwhelming and a real life-changing event. And my daughter last year was 2. I was 47. I realized that when she turned 15, I'd be 60. We also had become the caregiver for my uncle, who was my dad growing up. I was raised in a single family or single mom household. And he had not only had diabetes, as had his mom, my grandmother, who died of its complications, but he had also developed dementia. So I was heartbroken for him. I was scared for myself, scared for my family. He's only 22 years older than me. I had all these real health concerns. And then I also had this interesting event that I went to a conference that I go to once a year, and I only wear this particular jacket once a year, and it was 4 inches too short. It was already a tremendously large jacket. So all these concerns and motivation, I say the motivation of wanting to be healthy for my daughter, not having her when she was in her 20s have to take care of a dad with dementia. All that was really motivating me, and I just somehow I felt like this time that I would succeed, and I really wanted to kind of question everything, because I realized that well, not everyone, but when I looked at the world around me, people were getting less healthy and bigger. So that made me question. I actually believe that people do follow advice. And I know I was not eating well in that I was going to fast food often, but I believe whole grains were healthy, fat was bad.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of that was just, I had heard it so much that I had accepted that. So I did start by cutting out fast food and exercising more. But in addition to that, I just felt I had to just search the internet for as much information as I could. But the motivation was my daughter, and for myself, wanting to be healthy, and for my wife.
Mm. Absolutely, and that's a kind of a common motivation for people, and it's kind of important to remind yourself of the reason why you're doing it, and you're just sort of stating there that you're doing it for your wife and your kids, and just trying to remind yourself that you want to be as healthy and as strong as possible for them as well, sort of like throughout life. It's kind of an important point that some people kind of forget. So you kind of started off by just reducing your fast food and things like that, and then you came onto the internet. And in a recent article on Examiner.com, you mentioned quite a few LCHF, or low carb, high fat pioneers, as they said on there, and there was Professor Tim Noakes, Andreas Endfelt, I think it was on there as well, and myself, which I was very honoured, Larry, and it's great that it's kind of incredible. We were chatting about this before we started the interview, that it's incredible that people from around the world can help each other sort of through the internet. I mean, you're in Texas today and it's 5 a.m. I'm afraid, and yeah, it's an incredible thing. So where did the internet lead you?
Well, yeah, and there's also on YouTube. So there's the internet itself, web browser. There's Twitter. There's YouTube, and on YouTube there's something really interesting called the wisdom of crowds, versus the knowledge of the anointed. And I think, and Professor Noakes in some videos on YouTube makes this point that we're now not restricted to just going to our doctor and getting diet advice. People can post their success stories or what didn't work. Thankfully I hadn't gotten diabetes. I'm pretty sure I was pre-diabetic from my blood work. I haven't had any heart events, but there's so many stories on the internet. I followed my doctor's advice and it didn't work, but I tried this because I heard other people had success. It's amazing. I'm off all my meds. I feel better than I did 10, 20 years ago. So there's peer-to-peer sharing. We're no longer relegated just to what our personal doctor's saying. They're not the only source of information. And your blog was fascinating because along with fat being bad and whole grains being good, one of the things we hear over and over again is a calorie is a calorie. And being healthy and losing weight is simply a matter of a mathematical equation. With Jonathan Baylor, you had a wonderful interview with a few weeks ago. He pretty much smashes that theory, as do a lot of other people. Obviously, from your experiments, a calorie is not a calorie. We're not simple math equations. And so all of the resources, and especially finding out one of the critical things for me was a knowledge. I had never heard the name Ansel Keys before, or the 7 countries study, or the lipid hypothesis. I'd also never heard of William Banting and William Harvey. You have a wonderful tour that I encourage everyone to go to YouTube, go to your site, and look. And so there were these key moments in nutritional history, and nutritional what the standard advice was based on, that I had no idea. I just assumed that medical doctors, that had advanced degrees, knew science, and that there was a solid foundation for what they were then transmitting to the public. And I found out there was no foundation at all, and it was I never would have believed it a year ago. Basically right now, all my nutritional knowledge, almost all of it, is 180 degrees different than it was a year ago. And I had, I knew some things had to be wrong, but it was beyond what even I was expecting.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how kind of flimsy the conventional wisdom is based on, yeah, as you say, it's almost the exact opposite in terms of how to reverse obesity and anything like that. So let's kind of go through your journey over the past year. So how heavy were you at your largest?
Well, I was right around 290 when I started last May, and my heaviest ever was around 340. I think I was a 56 or 58 possibly inch waist size. I'm 35 inch waist size. I was around a 48 inch waist size last May, and I had sleep apnea really badly. I needed one of those machines that go over your face. Tired in the afternoon, and unable to run. Could not run more than I could play doubles tennis, not singles tennis, but I could not run at all. And I'd say the other thing was, and many people could probably relate to this, I was also hungry all the time. And I actually saw an article that coined a term that I hadn't heard before, but hangry. kind of a combination of hungry
That's brilliant.
and angry, and I kind of noticed this. I would eat my lunch, which was usually carb laden, then a couple hours later have a snack because I'd be so hungry, and that usually had more carbs. Then I get home by 5 o'clock and like, where's dinner? So I was constantly hungry, and as much as the weight, that just was my reality. I just, it becomes your reality if it happens for so many years that just take it for granted that people are hungry all the time. And so one of the things I when I tell people, in some ways the journey was hard. It mostly wasn't for me. I don't want to offend people, but I think because I was getting all this information and I kind of knew what to expect, it made it a lot less hard. But when you're overweight, there's a lot of things hard about being overweight. So that sometimes that part of the equation is left out. Change is hard. Changing foods that you thought were your favorites or were your favorites, that's hard. But it's no picnic being hungry all the time and having to wear a CPAP machine and worrying if you're going to make your next birthday in your 40s. I mean, those things are real things too, and those are hard as well. So, but I was not in good shape physically, and as I've also come to realize, even though I wasn't depressed or anything, I feel that my mental mood and just my daily joy and energy, going low carb, high fat has not only helped the physical, it's also helped the mental. Of course, I didn't know that because my old way was my normal. So yeah, I was not, as it turns out, in good physical health and not nearly as mentally strong as I was capable of being.
Wow, yeah, very much so. And so when did you kind of start going into low carb, high fat? Because you said you started off just by removing the fast food and things like that.
Yeah, I removed the fast food, and even with all the nutritional knowledge out, there's kind of this undercurrent of, I had heard of glycemic index, I had heard of blood sugar. I mean, everyone has.
Hmm.
So there's kind of that, and I've been thinking about this. There's still kind of this bread and pasta will make you overweight. Even with all the, whole grains are healthy, there's still kind of this little bit of, what people took for common knowledge 50 or 100 or certainly 150 years ago. So I did, shortly after that jacket not fitting, I don't think me and my wife have bought any bread or pasta since then. So I did start incorporating that, and I also was able to stop having my normal snacks, which were usually potato chips or candy bars. So, and we talked a little bit about this. I didn't go quite cold turkey on carbs because we still ate out probably 2 or 3 times a week, and I would still have a little bread. But in terms of snacks and what we bought at the supermarket, I did kind of go cold turkey, and it's hard to remember this, but the first few days, as I've learned, my body really didn't, it had the machinery, but it was kind of passive. It wasn't really working for my body to be able to burn my stored fat. So I do recall almost having a low carb flu, so to speak, because my body wasn't getting its normal amount of carbs, and it didn't at first know how to burn the stored fat. That had a it's kind of fascinating. You can change yourself at the cellular level. You can reactivate that, so to speak. So I do remember feeling a little woozy or possibly less energy, but that passed after, that kind of acute thing passed after just 2 or 3 days for me.
Yeah.
So I was left with maybe still occasionally having a little bread, going out to eat for a month or two, and then I just stopped that after a month or two. So at that point I was essentially wheat free.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, it's a really common thing to happen to people, that they have the low carb or the fake food flu, as you kind of remove all of the fake foods and the carbs as well, and you're kind of switching from just sugar burning to fat burning. It's quite common for people to have broken sleep for the first couple of weeks, and also get headaches during the day, which you got over in 2 or 3 days, which is kind of quick, because for some people it can last a bit longer, maybe 2 or maybe even 3 weeks, which is the really the hard part. But as soon as you get over that, and as from what you just said there, is that after a month or two, your cravings for anything really starchy and sugary kind of go away. And the way that this low carb, high fat diet works is that it changes your biochemistry, and so in turn it changes your behavior, right? The behavior kind of comes from, like, you have to have a little bit of willpower just at the beginning just to make those initial changes, but as long as you kind of keep with it for 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks, then your cravings start to go away and your behavior kind of changes from a biochemical standpoint, not really from a psychological standpoint. It's more your biochemistry is stopping you from craving all the bread and the pasta and any sugary treats and things like that. And is that kind of what you experienced?
That's spot on. That is so spot on. And that's, it's interesting being in a relationship with my wife. I felt all these changes, and what you just described, not being hungry anymore, was so nice after years of, and I didn't realize how much until the change happened, of just feeling hunger all the time. And I remember her telling me, "Oh, you're kind of an emotional eater," and that's very common. People believe that, and I'm sure, obviously, emotions are a big part of our daily life. But I told her, I'm just hungry all the time. And I'm sure there were 2 things, but physically, biochemically, as you were stating, literally with the blood sugar swings and all the insulin, I probably had insulin production 24 hours a day. Literally, I felt hungry all the time, and you're right, it was so nice. Obviously, the better health and the energy and how much stronger I feel, and the weight loss itself is wonderful. But if somehow I could even be roughly the same weight and just not be, just the reduction in hunger is so liberating, and such a better way of living that I can't. And you are also right that you said it does take some willpower and that's where the knowledge came in, because I knew to expect the cravings, and the cravings did not go away in 2 or 3 days. Definitely a month or even 2 months, the cravings were still there. But I kind of had other people's experience that it does work. And if you go to the low carb, high fat, people say over and over again they're not hungry. It's such a common thing. And I wanted to experience that. So having the people who had done this and gotten through it let me know that if I just kept up with it, that I would also be experiencing that. That helped, and it absolutely. I almost don't even know what hunger is anymore. It weirds people out, if that's a word. But yeah, you simply, once your body changes and becomes a good fat adapter, and you're used to having a high percentage of fat in your diet, hunger just simply goes away. So.
Yeah, it's totally non-existent, and it's almost like it's how we're meant to be, isn't it, Harry?
Exactly.
And, so just to give the folks who are watching and listening an idea of what your day now kind of looks like in terms of food and exercise as well, would be nice.
Sure. So I don't have the official bulletproof coffee, but I just found out about this a few months ago. But I take organic coffee, use something called an AeroPress, and a big glob of grass-fed butter. Usually at least a tablespoon, and a tablespoon of organic coconut oil. Put that in my coffee with a little half and half. I add a little half and half at the end, and that's a wonderful way for me to start the day. And then I'll most frequently, in addition to that, have an egg, either on the weekend when I have a little more time, probably a nice veggie omelet with cheese. During the work week, maybe a hard-boiled egg or a scrambled egg. Often some bacon, but so some dairy, meat. We've cut out oatmeal for my daughter. She's 3.5
Hmm.
now, and that made a wonderful change in her. We actually saw that she was happy before, but she is amazingly happy now, and started to perform better at her daycare once
Wow,
we made that change. Yeah, for her
that's
it was
interesting.
remarkable. So she gets an egg every day, and I would urge anyone well, anyone, but especially with kids, no grain. Well, I've gone grain free now, and so has my wife. We're kind of getting our daughter that way. And we can talk about that, the anti-nutrients and high
Hmm.
glycemic index. But I would urge everyone not to have grains for breakfast, because I think
Definitely.
that just sets you up to store fat instead of burn it. And but then lunches, sometimes recently I've have very little or almost no lunch, but when I do, it a little bit of fish, either salmon or tuna, or sometimes a little turkey, and some cheese, and sometimes berries, occasionally a little hummus, and bell peppers and mushrooms, and carrots. I know carrots have some sugar, but I usually have
That's
so
all good.
few.
Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
recommend people not to have it in their first month, and then you can bring it back in afterwards. That's what I say.
yeah, yeah. And then usually a light dinner, like say on average. And I've gone down, and this, I know some people might be worried about cost, but I'm probably eating 30 or 40% fewer calories. So you have to figure that into your cost equation. Yes, I'm buying higher quality food that per ounce might cost a little more. Although
Hmm.
I would say snacks are pretty processed food snacks are pretty high per ounce. But in any case, I eat less meat for dinner, and usually a spinach or a kale salad, and not a huge dinner. Some types of veggies. We sometimes a spinach salad, sometimes sautéed. We saute it sometimes with some sour cream, full fat sour cream. Put a little cheese in it, so that's a really nice side dish.
Mm.
But fish or meat or chicken with the fat on now, with the skin on, and
Absolutely. Good lad.
yeah, yeah. I always used to take. I was eating the skinless chicken breasts, of course, because that was healthy. Um, but yeah, and rarely snacking, but if so, some macadamia nuts, some raw cashews, maybe a little full-fat cottage cheese. So I guess I'm doing more primal than, if people know those terms, than paleo, because dairy
Mhm.
seems to agree with me, and I've
Yeah,
been able to lose weight pretty much effortlessly. And this whole community is very much on self-experimentation. So
big
what
time.
you just mentioned with the reintroduction, that's all self-experimentation. I've experimented with 85% dark chocolate recently, still losing weight. So that's a little treat that I have sometimes. So, I do think you should go clean for the first month or two, and then you'll understand your body better than, even all these wonderful experts can. So
Hmm.
the whole community is based on not only science. I think the two pillars are science and self-experimentation, which you're obviously you're
Trying to do my best
maybe
to.
the one of the world's leading experts on that. So
Maybe. I'm trying to get there at least. Anyway, thanks, Larry. So yeah, that's kind of your diet day to day, which is it kind of turns into like that's almost everyone's diet that does LCHF now. It is. It's kind of green salads with maybe a little bit of cheese and some eggs and things like that. And yeah, possibly bringing in some dairy. I mean, I have dairy in my diet as well. and yeah, just it's quite a lot of vegetables as well as the meat, and that's one thing that kind of a lot of critics kind of say you don't have vegetables on a low carb diet, but it's low carb, it's not no carb, and things like that. So what would you say to anybody that's kind of skeptical about low carb, high fat?
Yeah, I've seen, well, and you're right. I think I eat more vegetables now.
Yeah,
I just eat whole foods. And it's amazing. And it's amazing how easy it is. Somebody once said, the ultimate fast food is a carrot or a celery stick, or an apple or a mushroom.
mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, because when you think about it, I mean, you don't even have to open a wrapper, right? You just have to
That's it.
have those as part of your pantry. And to any skeptics, I would say the first thing to realize is that low fat, high carb is the fad. First of all, I don't want anyone who ever says that low carb, high fat, what we're advocating is the fad, has to think why they're saying that, because human beings from 2 million years ago, certainly to 10,000 years ago, and then even after the agricultural revolution, there's more and more research coming out that in the late 1800s, before the heart disease and the obesity and the cancer, meat was still the primary thing that, say, the working class was eating in the U.S. and England and the U.K. It wasn't this grain-based diet. So I don't think anyone, if they have a little reflection, can actually say that low carb, high fat is the fad. That's the first thing I want them to reflect on, because that's how human beings have eaten since really there's been human beings till just 40 years ago. So the fad is clearly the low fat, high carb, and in 40 years of that fad, because certainly 2 million years compared to 40 years, I mean, what is really the fad is the standard diet advice now. What's happened in those 40 years? Heart disease has, I think in the U.S. it's 300,000 to 500,000 people a year dying, and I would say the vast majority of that's preventable. Obesity skyrocketed, type 2 diabetes has skyrocketed. So, we evolved, every one of us, no matter what you believe is nutritionally correct, you're alive today because your genes were selected to thrive on what humans ate, which was primarily what they were able to gather, and hunt. So we all have genes that thrive on high fat and animal products because they were selected to thrive on that because that's what human beings have eaten for most of the time we've been around. So clearly the fad, and I hope anyone listening, if they believe differently, would realize this, the fad is clearly the low fat, fat is bad, and grains, whole grains are good for you. That's clearly the fad. So that's what I would tell to any skeptics.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said, Larry. Well said. Now, you're 100 pounds lighter than you were a year ago, so exercise must be a little bit
Oh,
easier. And what kind of exercise are you doing now?
yeah, more than even the diet changes, I think I'm more proud of the fact that I've done a few 5Ks now, and
Hmm.
I run regularly, and that was huge, and the internet helped me on that. I did look up success stories, and there's a lot of them, at least in the US, on Huffington Post, and I had never heard this term, but a bunch of people mentioned C to 5K, which stands for Couch to 5K, and
Yeah.
a lot of us have smartphones, and there's apps that are free or just a couple dollars. And even when I was fitter, and we can get a little, my food history is interesting because I came from a family that really didn't know how to cook, and my mom tried her best, but she was a young single mom, and she hadn't really gotten cooking knowledge. So I was kind of raised on those hideous TV dinners in the 1970s,
Hmm.
which as bad as they are now. Um, but I don't know, because of that, I was really active, thank goodness, but I could never really run for any length of time. And even so, I started kind of making these dietary changes in May, and then later on in the summer, around August, September, I tried the run, and I made one really good decision. I bought a really expensive pair of shoes, and so because I was so overweight, I was still probably around in the 270s when I started, could not run 20 seconds. But I started with the C to 5K, which really is mostly walking to begin. And I repeated weeks. It's like an 8-week program. I turned it into about a 4-month program because I didn't want to, obviously being so overweight, and also where I was with my cardio, I needed to go slower than progressing every week. But I stuck with it, and I remember February 1st, I ran my first 5K, and my only goal was not speed, but to not stop, and I made that, and then a month or two later, I ran my second one. I cut off about 8-9 minutes. Still, so the second one was about 31 minutes, 32. But for somebody who, a few months prior to that couldn't run 30 seconds to just do a 5K. So I probably now 1 to 3 times a week do like a 2.5 mile run. And then I do a few, maybe 10 to 15 minute kind of strength sessions at home with like push-ups, sit-ups, and a kettlebell. So I don't do a lot. I'm also starting to sprint, and I'm about 15, 20 pounds from my goal weight, so I may have to up some things. But the running's kind of my constant, and then just some strength training I can do at home.
Perfect. And that's kind of what I encourage people that feel like they want to obtain and maintain a healthy lifestyle. That's what they can kind of start off with when it comes to exercise. Just start with the walking and building it up like you did, in terms of doing 500 meters walking, 500 meters running, and things like that, and gradually get it so that eventually you're going to be running 5K, but then also making sure that you can that you fit in some strength exercises as well, and doing things like press ups and using a kettlebell and things like that are kind of important, and all it takes is 10-15 minutes of doing it, because that's kind of all you need to do. People can check out on my YouTube channel here for the weekday wake up workouts, and there's a few ideas on there for people that they can follow. And we've got some interesting stuff coming up for the YouTube channel itself, using our new toning toolkits, they're called, which is kind of just resistance bands and things like that. So look out for those as well, Larry. But
yeah, and if I start getting up at 5 a.m. regularly now,
and smash out a quick weekday workout, for sure. Cool. Thank you so much for your time today, Larry. Just do you have any final wise words for viewers and listeners out there that they're thinking about trying to obtain a healthier lifestyle?
Yeah, I would say that first, it's worth it, many times more than I thought it would be. That our bodies are amazingly resilient and forgiving. I think that it's so hopeful that these things are reversible. And there's people doing work like Dr. Eric Westman at Duke University in the U.S., where he's getting a lot of patients off of insulin. And so no matter where you were, I started at 47. I'll be 49 next month, and I'm in the best shape of my life. I can remember I'm in better shape than I was at 20, 21, 22. Our bodies, thankfully, are very forgiving. When you start food, I've lived this. Food is the most powerful medicine. No matter what medicines, even 100, 1,000 years in the future, it'll never be as powerful or as important as food. And thankfully, our bodies will respond. If you change the way you eat to a low-carb, high-fat diet, and you should also, I would urge people to research on grains. There's a Mark's Daily Apple has a wonderful kind of humorous viewpoint on why he's grain-free. So just research. There's a book called Whole Grains, Empty Promises. It's only $2.99 on Kindle in the U.S., so probably a couple pounds in the U.K. Anthony Capolo, I believe, COO. But He references literally hundreds of articles on why whole grains. There's never been a randomized controlled trial that have actually shown that whole grains are healthy. So definitely research Ansel Keys, Ancelkeys, and the lipid hypothesis. Follow Sam and his blog and on Twitter at Sam Feltham. Definitely Professor Tim Noakes from South Africa, one of the leading. He wrote really the running Bible on carb loading, and he's changed his views 180 degrees. And he has a YouTube station called the Noakes Foundation. He's also a great follow. So just join the community, research yourself. Don't trust me. Don't trust anyone else. Trust your own body through self-experimentation, and do your own research. And then whatever age you are, you can be. I don't worry about getting diabetes or arthritis or dementia anymore, even though my uncle had it, because I know that I'm eating the way that my genes want me to eat, so they're going to express their best potential instead of their worst potential. So it's doable, it's worth it. You'll improve your mind, your body, your relationships, and avoid all these costly, painful diseases, and then you'll be able to, help other people, and then collectively, if people are healthier, our societies and ultimately the world will be that much healthier. So.
Awesome. Well said, Larry. Well said. And from somebody that has self-experimented widely and had real success, it's an incredible story, Larry, and a big congratulations to you and your family as well, because I know your wife and kids are feeling the health benefits of leading a real foods lifestyle as well. So that's fantastic to hear. Fantastic. Cool. So yeah, thanks so much for your time today, Larry. There's only one more thing to do, and that's to hear a smash it out from Larry Diamond. So on 3, I want to hear a smash it out right from you. So 1, 2, 3.
Smash it out.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's great, mate. That's great. Super. So have a good rest of your day. You got a lot to go ahead with. It's coming up to 6 a.m. in Texas. So have a good day. Yeah, I'll speak to you soon, Larry. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
You too.
Bye.
Take care.